And thank you for joining us today for the first webinar in our Optimal Dynamics LinkedIn Live series, in which we'll bring you in-depth coverage on pressing trucking and logistics topics. Today, we will be discussing AI in trucking. It's obviously a hot topic in every industry, and our partner McLeod Software recently held their first AI conference that started to set the stage. During that meeting, there were many interesting conversations and questions that arose that demonstrated the need for continued education, cutting through the hype with real-world use cases, and best practices for preparing to embrace new technologies. To help us do that today, I'm excited to introduce our speakers. Daniel Powell is a co-founder and CEO of Optimal Dynamics, the first decision intelligence platform designed specifically for the logistics industry that helps carriers optimize for performance and profitability. And Doug Schrier, Vice President of Growth and Special Projects at McLeod Software. He's a driving force behind the company's strategic expansion. Doug has dedicated the past 13 years to the transportation sector, including impactful roles at Covenant Logistics and Transflow. Because today's session is meant to be a brief, impactful 20-minute discussion, our phone lines are muted and we'll be answering questions following today's webinar. Now let me go ahead and hand it over to Doug to get us started.
Absolutely. The first question we're asked is, why is McLeod having an AI conference? So, I started at McLeod roughly 7 months ago. One of the initiatives that I've been asked to lead is to drive growth, and not just growth of the number of customers we have, but product growth and customer value growth. One of those key areas that I lead is around AI, data science, and business intelligence. And as we came in to look at what AI should be for the industry, what we found really quickly was there was a bunch of use cases, but no one really understood what AI meant for them. No one really dialed in what those use cases were that they wanted to solve first. So we figured we'd bring everyone together in Birmingham, had over 150 customers come and attend, and determine, is AI hype, smoke and mirrors, or is it going to materially change our business? Here at McLeod, I think many of our customers that attended and vendors believe that AI will materially change our business as we move forward. With that said, we really spent a lot of time around those use cases, and we'll continue discussion around those use cases today, tomorrow, at a user conference in September. But we're really starting to see some of these technologies impact our customers. So, Daniel, I know you have the second question that we came up, and this one's very interesting to me. How do you tell the difference between AI and math, and is there a difference?
Yeah, this was a question that, when we were in the audience listening to, I think just set the tone of the event so well, and it was fantastic to see McLeod host this event, and we want to thank you for putting it together. It's really important that we're getting team members in the industry together and starting the conversation. I think many people look at the umbrella of AI as a confusing subject, and I think rightfully so for how it's been talked about over the last couple of years. And our goal is demystifying it. So when you get a question about what's the difference between AI and math, I jumped all over it, right? For me, AI is usually just that. It is usually just math. Remember, the goal of artificial intelligence at its core is to get technology, to get computers to enable them to make human-like decisions. This could be technically as simple as, if the sun is shining, take your umbrella away, like an if statement. That's a human decision. It's not a very complex one, and probably can't run a truckload carrier off of it. We've seen so many different types of new novel applications using tool sets under the AI umbrella. Some of them were in attendance, some of them weren't. You might see the one that sort of caught all of our attention over the last couple of years, which is generative AI. Now, generative AI isn't going to handle your procurement events and dispatch your trucks, but it might start to play a huge role in your customer service, in your ability to respond to reach outs. You might use something called large language models, which may be viewed as another confusing term, to read documents, right? I think it's critically important, we'll dive into today, to truly understand what problem you're solving, what decision you're solving. For OD, we work an entirely different problem than reading documents and chatting with people. We work on automating human decisions on the operational planning floors. So this might be using reinforcement learning paired with what we call stochastic optimization. And what that means is we can now make better load tender decisions and allocation decisions further in advance, even on uncertain environments, or we make improved dispatching decisions, even when only half your network is known. So at the end of the day, the subject shouldn't have to be scary. I think it all starts with what is the problem that you're working on, and then what are the tools that are going to use to solve these problems? Because at the end of the day, AI is generally just math, but it's the tools you use and the outcomes that are most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Is AI really just math? And when I talk to owners of businesses, and CEOs and COOs, they really are focused on the business outcomes. So, one of the things I always come back to, does it matter, right? If I can achieve your business outcome with something that existed for the last 15 years, or I do it with this new, generative AI, but it delivers the same results to you at the same cost, does it really matter, right? Let's drive better business outcomes for our customers.
Yeah, and just to go on to, I don't think it matters. I think you need to solve the problem, truly. That outcome has to be there. You need the right tools to solve it. But you might just take the same techniques that have been working on the last 10 years and just really getting them perfectly right. And that might be the most impactful outcome. So I think it's almost important that you stay away from just the next industry buzzword and making sure that you have the right tool for your specific problem at hand. And I think that's the most critical component.
Absolutely. My data science team will tell me one really big thing too, is it doesn't matter what level of technology you use in or where that technology exists and when it was created. The biggest issue that they have, the biggest issue that I think the industry will have as we move into this AI generation, is around clean and good data and being able to connect to that data in near real time. Talk to me a little bit about how Optimal Dynamics handles data, how important data is to making these decisions for your customers.
It all starts at the core of our partners. We've built some of the most advanced decision platforms in the truckload industry to date, but it is as weak as the weakest link in the chain. So this all starts at our tech partners. And for many of our customers, this is our robust enterprise-grade McLeod integration. These are enterprise systems. These are systems that have to work together at incredibly high service levels. These are expensive businesses. These are complex operations that just don't have the flexibility for much downtime. So it all starts at kind of the data that we receive. Now we receive, multiple points of data for our applications, right? Which is critical. We get a lot of our data from the TMS, and we also receive data from, the customer's electronic login device. It also goes into data practice. I think when people look at AI, using data intelligence, using data systems, you can start getting going now, right? If you're starting to think about how do I invest in this technology, for some customers, it means you're ready to implement tomorrow. For some customers, you don't have to put $1 down on the table. Start thinking about how you're entering data. Start thinking about how your operators are maybe putting a lot of information in the comments fields versus updating the PTA of your drivers or the facility hours or the pickup appointments. So I think a lot of what you can do can start today. The better data that goes into OD, the higher adoption and the higher adherence that we can drive to our customers' businesses, and that yields bigger business impact, yields more time for humans to do human items. So it all starts at the core partners. We've had a multi-year long. I literally just got off a call with the partnership team and Ahmed at McLeod before this. It takes commitment, it takes constant work, but it starts at data practices leading into strong data integrations that leads into strong platforms. If you get those three components right, you have an opportunity to really move the needle that we are all hoping for with these types of applications.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that we're working here at McLeod. So McLeod will have some of its own AI solutions as we move forward. We've actively working on some things behind the scenes, but more importantly, trying to integrate correctly companies like yours, Optimal Dynamics, is a key focus for us, right? Because you're going to do things that we never dreamed of doing. Maybe when I think of Optimal Dynamics, I think about decision support. I think about optimization. How does AI bring Optimal Dynamics to that next level in decision support and optimization?
Yeah, I mean, our lineage goes back kind of almost as long as McLeod's been, doing business, which is incredible. And we do solve very different problems. I think what makes this such a harmonious partnership. We've focused fully on two very core problems. When we look at, using different tool sets to solve the problem in trucking, for us, why that's important is we're now actually solving the full problem, the real problem, right? Kind of just using half approaches to try to get, a partial outcome. So for us, we've integrated a number of different toolkits. We may use an item that some people have heard of called reinforcement learning. And what this does for us is our systems can now learn about the values of drivers being in different locations, even when you don't have data. All truckload carriers know the problem of their shippers aren't all calling them 2 weeks in advance with their perfect loads that are always staying the same and nothing changes. Truckers would have a lot more hair if they did. So we use reinforcement learning to learn those downstream values and the uncertainty that your shippers might cause. We use machine learning, something else is heard, but not to solve the whole problem, to learn about what demand we might get from our customers. This is critically important as we dispatch our trucks, as we plan our drivers. And we're actually starting to use, in some cases, large language models to pull in data that might be in unstructured data sources and help them pull into the McLeod ecosystem and into the Optimal Dynamics for decision. So there's a whole variety of tools under the AI umbrella that you can all go down to solving very specific problems. For us, what that means at the end is hopefully we've solved the full problem. We've solved the problem to the point where you're now actually changing what that human is doing. And I think that's a big difference when you're talking about, the bucket of AI applications being helpful versus augmenting. When you can start taking the burden off to the actual team member to the point where they're really acting more of a quality assurance, it really changes a lot of outcomes. One, the optimization of the business, can have a big tick up. And then humans can actually start to move to more human activities versus just paper pushing. In our ideal world, our technology together pushes people to the walls of the company.
Right.
Spend more time with drivers, more time with customers, rather than more time pushing a ball uphill every day. So very specific uses of AI, solving very specific problems. And the end result means we're actually finally starting to solve this sort of like self-driving car problem of the trucking decisions.
Absolutely. So human in the loop is really important, right? They're QA and they're ultimately are executing a plan that the solution is coming up with. And then ultimately they're helping to retrain, right? Part of that QA aspect with machine learning is to take that back in and understand why they made a change or why they didn't use the solution that you came up with.
It's incredibly key. And if we don't position our teams to act as that role, the chance of success is very low, right? We are not at a day where we can just throw these systems over a wall and expect them to go, fully autonomous and solve all your problems. They can get you pretty far, but without that quality assurance, that human intuition, that human knowledge, adding context and color to the applications, making sure that there aren't any data issues because, sorry, we're not there yet. There will be some. And I think it's a critical component to making these systems a success. And I think expectation management in investing in these types of technologies is key too, right? I think, unfortunately, call it marketing, call it buzz, hype, AI has been moved into this magic wand.
Yeah.
It's a singular thing. It's a magic wand that can solve all problems and you just wave it around. And at the end it goes back to, they're really just math tools to solve specific problems. And as long as if you can keep your expectations right, you can get the value without causing frustration for yourself, for your employees too.
Absolutely. Every startup I see is .ai now, right? That's their new domain of choice. And things that we used to call data science, things that we call basic math, is now all AI. So in many ways, we're taking the name around the approach and we're making it very general, which could be a positive if you really look at it and say, okay, I don't care about the approach as much as I care about the outcomes and making sure that the approach and outcomes meet my culture. But with this and this rapid investment in AI technology from both current vendors in the space and startups in the space, what should I be looking at if I'm starting my journey? I say, hey, I want my carrier to have some AI within its space. I want to start playing with some of this AI technology, but there's just too many vendors out there. What should we start looking at in regards to what a good vendor is, what the right use case is for us, and how I really get to a point from not doing anything and get off that starting line to where we're actually deploying some AI within my carrier?
Yeah, I think that's a really strong question. I think our best advice as we talk to prospects is actually to look more internally, and we try to be a guiding, support system there, which is what decisions are we actually trying to make? We're not trying to purchase AI to purchase AI. That's a great road. I like the thought process, but it's a good road for failure. What decisions are we trying to make?
Right.
So in the light of optimal dynamics decisions, we're trying to have more resilient load allocation and acceptance decisions. We're trying to improve our planning of our drivers. That's a great starting place, right?
Absolutely.
The second component is understanding the underlying components of your business there. So now that we've bucketed into those, we run a long haul network and our customers don't actually send us data until 1 or 2 days out. Okay, so now we have a load planning issue and we need a system that's resilient enough that we know that if we're making a plan to a dispatcher, it's going to understand that our shippers aren't going to call until day of. And by starting with that component, and actually a little bit after this webinar, we're going to be releasing a QA cheat sheet, is you can now start having these conversations because now you fundamentally understand what decision am I actually trying to help out with new tools. And it makes it much easier to pair up the deficiencies or pros of a tool once you underlie your decision. If I'm just running a local network with trucks, I don't have any of those issues. I have all my loads, I know them, and I'm just trying to do a routing problem. So that's a really key component, and I think it really enables the business outcomes and business decisions as the primary talk point. And I think it's critical that the vendors are tying their tools to solve those nuances of the business because, we aren't consumers here. These are very large, expensive, complex operations. Right. This isn't just a little finance mint widget, great application, but that's not going to automate a truckload business. So start out, what is your own problem? Double down, understand the complexities of your problem. Hopefully your vendors, I'm sure McLeod does this with your customers, OD does this with theirs, helps lead the way, helps ask those questions. And then once you have those down, it's showing the business outcome. So one of the things that we do is very rarely talk about the word AI with a customer. We try to educate them on the tools, and we have a robust proof of value process. So it's showing the outcomes first, data-driven approach, decision approach first, tying that into a financial return and making sure that it's a defensible, investable item on their side that they commit the resources required to make project success. So that's kind of what we would recommend for customers to think about when they start. If they're at day zero and thinking about how to get into this, those are the things that I would amend them for at least players in the truckload space who are thinking about planning operations.
Absolutely. And they're preparing for a race right now. So it's kind of the last question that we had coming out in this session. But if I'm a carrier, I'm preparing to start a race in this AI generation, which can bring great business results to me, rapid productivity gains within my floor. But I have to do some things in order to get there, right? We talked about human in loops. How do I prepare the human? And then how do I prepare the data that sits within my system to actually support this generation?
Yeah, I think those are the perfect two things to focus on. For the data, start now, be good, be vigilant. I know it feels like extra work, but the input here will lead to much better outputs when it becomes time to use system. And it also helps to have a goal in mind. So when you're thinking about, biting out of an elephant, just having better data is a broad questions. So
Right.
think about what outcomes you're trying to solve. If they're planning problems, really think about the planning data. If they're finance problems, think about your accounting data, right? So make sure that you have that, and that can help your team members start. And then for your team, this is a delicate subject. We're not replacing people. We're allowing people to do more. And so having proper communication about what their roles might be at the future of your business and making sure that they're set up for success is going to drastically reduce the friction when you start deploying these technologies, because it's very normal for a person to be scared of their job, be scared of what they've built. And so ensuring you're having that proactive communication early with your team, even before you're adopting technology like this, is really key for successful deployments after the fact, because it's here. This isn't bleeding edge anymore. The impacts and case studies that we jointly see together are incredible. Yeah. We see many of them. And so early discussions, proactive discussions, work with your teams. And I think the difference is when you see good owners have those discussions, it's light and day.
Absolutely.
So
change management is so critical, right? Yeah. Having the right people is critical today. And now, tech is so important. It's just changing so quick. But that is the last question we have. I love these conversations. So Daniel, thank you for having this with me. I think Erica's going to jump in and close out the show for us.
Thank you both. Obviously, we could spend a lot more time than 20 minutes today, but I really appreciate the brief, very impactful conversation that we went through, some of the interesting insights and questions that arose at the McLeod AI Conference, some of the best practices for consumers getting started today with embracing AI. So thank you very much, Doug and Daniel, and thank you to everyone that joined us today. Daniel did mention that we will share some of these questions with you following up on today's webinar, and the recording will also be available shortly on LinkedIn. We'll also follow up offline with some of your questions that came through. Again, thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you soon on the next Optimal Dynamics LinkedIn Live webinar.